following is a presentation of Learfield IMG College. From the Georgia Southern Sports Network, powered by Learfield IMG College.
Wings up, Eagle Nation! Touchdown, Georgia Southern!
This is Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Eagle athletics.
Taking a look through all the other action in Georgia Southern athletics this past week, a lot of road action, a lot of teams hitting the old I-16 out of town.
Getting on the steel horse and taking us to parts north, south, west, wherever. Can't really go too much farther east.
Now let's return to the Learfield IMG College studios. Here are your hosts, Colin Lacy and Danny Reed.
That's a fact, Jack.
Welcome into another edition of Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look inside Georgia Southern athletics, episode number 164, coming your way here on the Georgia Southern Sports Network. Colin Lacy alongside the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, as we get you set for another basketball weekend. You are hitting the road to the Alabamas. Georgia Southern women's basketball going to be home against the Texas squads. Hopefully we have 4 games between us. We haven't done that this year, but hopefully we get to that. But we will dive into Georgia Southern basketball. We'll catch up with Brant Freeman again. Last week we talked about Brant and thought that he and his Texas Staters were going to be coming in on Thursday, and about 10 minutes after we hung up with Brant.
Which is how it works.
Well, right, exactly. Would expect nothing less. About 10 minutes after we hung up, realized that the Texas State game was being canceled, but Texas State going to be the opponent for Georgia Southern women's basketball. Since he does the ESPN Plus broadcast, he can talk about both of those. We'll also have JT Crabtree, the voice of South Alabama basketball, coming up in the later part of this edition of Inside Eagle Nation. But first, got to get to a very special guest here in the podcast studio, as Erick Reasoner, the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Development, joining us here on the show. Erick, appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
He is special, isn't he?
Feels special.
As long as you feel it, that's all that matters, right?
That's right.
Talk about what the last year plus has been like for you guys over at the Athletic Foundation. A lot of changes have been going in the Athletic Foundation, moving it to the Erick Russell Fund, which we've talked about a lot over the last year or so. But what have you seen those changes now that they've been in for a couple of months, almost a year now? What have you seen those changes really kind of pay the dividends of?
So overall fundraising, we've been amazed by Eagle Nation because last 12 months, so the last calendar year, we're going to be over $10 million. Previous record in a 12-month period was a little over $4 million. So more than, about 2.5 times it. We set the record last fiscal year was $6.4 million. Right now we're at about $6 million this fiscal year, and we still got 6 more months. But talking about the Erick Russell Fund, Source 6, a lot of that money that we have raised has been outside the Erick Russell Fund. It's been for facilities, sports specific. So you just got to think that that's all designated. So outside of that, our annual fund, the Erick Russell Fund, that's what our operating budget is. And we've got a Soar to 6 program trying to get to 6,000 donors. Currently, we're around 2,000 to 2,500. Have a couple initiatives going in there, but really we need to beef up the operating budget to go along with all the capital projects that we're raising money for.
The fact that so many of you guys came in during the middle of a pandemic and now you're seeing all the fruits of that labor, being able to bring in more than $10 million over a 12-month stretch, how important but how challenging also was it to lay the groundwork during a time where none of us had experienced what we were going through?
Yeah, it was definitely not easy. So coming in with no relationships when nobody wants to meet you and start a relationship makes it tough.
A lot of Zoom high fives, is that a thing?
Yeah.
Or
No, actually a lot of schools do Zoom visits. We didn't. We were lucky enough that we came in kind of August and got to start making visits and then it really ramped up. So I'd say during the football season, we got a decent amount of people, and then we started hitting the road. So we had Ben Rodriguez, David Cutler, and myself mainly at that time. Jared did a lot of fundraising. But the first 6 months, we raised a total of $1 million last year. So we actually, of the 6.4, 5.4 of that was in the last 6 months. And this year, we've done about $6 million the first 6 months. So it did take a little bit of time, but we got there.
You were telling us not too long ago that the big success for the Athletic Foundation and Georgia Southern as a whole has been not just the dollar amounts, but so many different people getting involved, whether it's Jared, whether it's Chris, so many different people getting major gifts, and I know that's a huge asset for you guys.
Yeah. So last month alone, just in December, we had 9 different people get major gifts. So
that's not a month of the year where people are typically looking to give a lot, I would imagine, with the Christmas holiday, or would they be because it's a year-end deal?
It's a year-end deal. Okay. So, yeah, normally it's a big month for us.
Okay.
It's the biggest December we've ever had, so I think we're going to be around $1.1 million just in the month of December. Again, 9 different people getting gifts, which I've been at bigger schools that have raised a lot of money. I've never seen that done. So it's really impressive. And Colin, like you said, Jared Banco, Chris Davis, Tracy Ham got a gift. We've got Larry Mays over in the Athletic Foundation now, so he also helped out. And then everybody that's expected to raise some money too. And Frank Cook, who we call the Rainmaker, he's the one that really brought it in.
I got a question on Facebook Live. Terry wants to know, are you still soda free?
Oh, no. No,
you got your water. You could have sold it.
Yeah, I'm less soda. How would you say that?
Okay.
Is this something that's been ongoing?
Is this a New Year's resolution?
No.
Okay.
I don't do resolutions.
Okay.
I figure if you're going to change something, you should just do it then instead of waiting for a New Year.
There you go.
No, I had a kidney stone for about a month.
Oh.
What was it?
That would do it.
Yeah, pretty much a month in November. I was actually visiting donors in Atlanta. Hit me in the hotel room at like 2 a.m. and
exactly when you would want it to.
Yeah. So anyways, I had that for a month. So I gave up my Mountain Dew for a little bit. But once I passed out with the kidney stones, back to Mountain Dew we went.
Well, we got Optima Plug this week, so that works out.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, so that was fun. Thanks, Terry, for reminding me.
It was all gone, just like the stove. We got to bring her back.
He started twitching there for a minute there, Terry. Talk about what the future for this athletic department holds. We've talked about all the successes that you guys have had, and rightfully so, ever since you got to Statesboro and your staff has been put in place. But what does the future look like? I know still a lot of ways to go for the IPF, the Convocation Center, but what does the next, 6-12 months look like for you guys?
Like you said, still finishing up the Convocation Center indoor. The Tippins family indoor is what we'll start calling it probably, pending approval. But we're about $6 million on the indoor practice facility. That's without us even publicly naming it or publicly displaying it or being able to give. So all one-on-one fundraising, we're at $6 million. We got about $4 million left on that. Convocation Center, we have very little to go. With a verbal, we're right at about where we needed to be. So then we started looking at more facilities, but again, sort of 6 is a big thing for us. And we were talking about it before the show, but with the schools coming into the conference, we're going to be 10th in the conference in operating budget. So we're way behind in that category. Facilities, I think we're going to start catching up with all that we're raising, but we need to hit that sort of 6, get 6,000 donors, starting at $60. So it's fairly easy for everybody to do, but the more people we can get in the pipeline, we can increase that operating budget with Erick Russell Fund.
So much about what you do and really college athletics as a whole is about relationships. We can sit and talk with anybody about a variety of different things, but how do you create a relationship that can ultimately lead to a sizable financial contribution?
Well, the good thing for us and our job is we're just conduits. So we meet with people and we try to connect them with where they want to give, but it's not us selling really. We're meeting people that already have a passion. That makes our job easy. They're normally Georgia Southern grads or they have tickets, and we just kind of present options and let them pick where they're going to go. So, you have to have a relationship, but really the coaches, the staff, the student athletes, that's where the relationships really are. And we just, I don't want to say monetize them, but we just kind of give the options of how to help those relationships or the people they have the relationships with, and they go to it.
How do you go about kind of on a day-to-day basis of trying to almost compartmentalize what a major gift looks like, what a just regular Erick Russell Fund donor looks like, and how much you devote to each?
That's actually, I'm not saying a good question is stalled. That's actually a really good question. You don't get asked that very often. So really, we know what a major gift donor looks like because you can do research, and this is going to probably sound crazy to people at home, but you can see how much a person's home is worth. You can see their salary if they're a public company and they're high enough in a public company, how much stock they have. We can really see a lot of assets. So that really helps us delineate who's major gift, who's annual fund. But really, the hope is you're both. So that's with the giving societies. They reward both. So we want people giving to the Erick Russell Fund, but then also giving on top of that contribution and helping out with the facilities. But as far as time we spend, it depends on a person. So David Cutler, he's annual fund. His primary responsibilities are beefing up the Erick Russell Fund, but he's also raised almost $1 million in major gifts in the past year and a half. So he does, and that's very little of his job responsibilities are major gifts. Ben, on the other hand, mainly major gifts, but Ben and Alicia, who are in our office, they're hitting the road, and if somebody doesn't have the capacity for a major gift, which a lot of us don't, I definitely don't, we go to Erick Russell Fund. So we just try to get them to support however we can.
When you look at, and a lot of people don't realize how much work and effort goes into, it's not just you going and taking somebody to lunch and trying to figure out what they look like. And that's part of it, but a big part of it is all the work that you guys do behind the scenes that nobody sees. How much, when you're going into, say you're going after Danny as a major gift donor because he's got all the money, but you're going after Danny, how much time do you spend on each individual person that you go?
It depends on the individual. So I know I'm using that answer, but I'm not trying to beat around it. So normally they'll tell you 18 months for a major gift. So from meeting somebody to closing the major gift, that's more in a university setting. In athletics, we're normally in the 12-month period. But the time you spend, it all depends on if they're retired, probably more time because they want more of a conversation. If they're on the go and they're an executive Fortune 100 company, they don't want to talk to you as much. They got other stuff to do. So then it's maybe once a quarter that you're talking to them. But really, we just carry the relationship, however the what we call them as prospects, however they see fit.
You brought up the idea about the stock assets a little bit earlier, and that's part of a social media post that we saw within, I want to say, the last couple of weeks about how prospective Erick Russell Fund donors or people that are currently giving can tie that all together and make it even more of a valuable situation.
Yeah. So we kind of turn into tax advisors a little bit. We're not allowed to advise on tax, so don't take that. But we get to learn the tax codes. We're a 501c3, so just like any other charity, we can really benefit people by transferring stock is a big one, or anything that's an appreciated asset. So it can be real estate. I've seen paintings donated before. I've actually seen doubloons.
What now?
Doubloons.
You don't know what a doubloon is?
No, am I supposed to?
They like pirate money, right? Yeah. I was at a school once that somebody brought in doubloons, and we had to meet them at a coin store, and they sold it to the coin dealer, and then we got the money.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that one didn't work out tax-wise as good because they didn't transfer it straight to us, so they didn't miss out on capital gains. But for stock transfers, you can transfer it straight to our bank account. You miss out on capital gains, plus you get the full tax deduction. Much better than selling it and then giving it to us.
Okay, are doubloons the craziest thing you've seen given?
Well, I guess it depends what you call crazy. When I was at Florida, we actually had a guy who passed recently, unfortunately, Stumpy Harris, who was a very big supporter, and he had a fleet. So he had an RV camper, a car, like a portable bathroom, motorcycle, all this stuff that was all orange and blue and gatored out. The car, when you honk the horn, was the fight song, that type of stuff. And he gave us those to raise money with. So we actually auctioned some of those off. So that was kind of different.
You talked about the champion societies, and I know that's been a big push over the last couple of weeks, and you've had a lot of new people join in on the champion societies, and I know on National Signing Day you had a lot of those coming out publicly on social media. But talk about the champion societies, and it's not just a championship society, it's multiple different levels.
Yeah, so when I got here, we had the one champion society was in the annual fund. And just the thought process was we get someone to give $50,000 over 5 years. It helps the operating budget, which I talked about earlier. But then once they're done with that 5 years, there is nothing. So if you can do another $50,000 over 5 years, there is no stewardship, no nothing. You're done after that year. So we created more giving societies. We also moved it out of the annual fund. We wanted to reward people for giving to all areas. So we added 3 other societies. We got Talent Society, Beautiful Eagle Creek, and then the Oak Circle, which is our top one. And with those, it's now cumulative. So somebody could give us $50,000 over 5 years like they would have previously, but for the rest of their life, they're getting the benefits. In the past, again, 5 years and you were done. It didn't matter what you had done. So we've increased that a lot, like you kind of alluded to. So I think we had maybe around 90 Giving Society members when we implemented them last February, so a little less than a year ago. Now we're at like 140. So, and that's using the same math. So it's apples to apples. So anyways, we've increased that a lot. The Oak Circle, which is a really high society, that's $500,000 over your lifetime. I think we had around 10 when we rolled them out, and now we're at like 16.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's been really good.
How have you guys marketed the idea of being a donor to young alumni?
Yeah, so that's a focus of ours. If you look at our alumni base, we're really young, and that's because of the growth that we've had recently. As far as enrollment goes. So I'm trying to remember the exact stats, but I think it's around 40% of our alumni are under the age of 30. Or is it 40? Sorry, I'm working that out in my head. I think it's under the age of 40. And then 67% of our alumni are under the age of 50. So 2/3 of our alumni are under the age of 50. So we have a young alumni program that's 30 and under. You get half the donation to the Erick Russell Fund gets you full benefits. But something cool that Stephanie Roberts in our office came up with is cocktails and kicks. Yeah. So that's going to be in February, the night before Georgia State basketball. For those that are already young alumni Erick Russell Fund members, is $20. All you can eat, all you can drink. We're going to have DJ Nino there.
Ooh.
I think that's how you say his name. And then we've got a couple signed sneakers. We got custom painted sneakers. So far, we've gotten Tyler Bass and Kendall Vildor to sign. I think we're working on Youngwei Koo and Matt Breida. And actually, I mixed those up. We already have Breida. We don't have Vildor yet. But we're going to give away probably 2 pairs of signed shoes at the event. It's cocktail attire plus tennis shoes so people can show off their sneakers. And then if you're not a young alumni member, it's $50. But you can only go if you're 30 and under. So only if you're young alumni. We're not going to have any old farts like
you're
me
out,
there.
Danny.
But it's $50 if you're not already a young alumni member. So that also includes the Erick Russell Fund membership for a year.
Finally, before we let you go, how do people reach out, get involved if they're trying to either become a major gift, a champion society, a giving society, just a Erick Russell Fund member? How do they reach out? How do they do it?
A couple websites. So just to join the Erick Russell Fund, give.gseagles.com. And I think you've got 2 clicks and you can give. If you want to research things, we've got gseagles.com/foundation. That kind of shows all the ways to give to us. And then we've got our info on the website, but Ben Rodriguez, David Cutler, Alicia Irves, Larry Mays, all good ones to reach out to, myself as well. But email, call. I kind of talked about catering to the donor before. We do that communication-wise too. So if somebody wants to talk on the phone, if they prefer text, if they prefer email, we do whatever they want to do. So those are the ways.
Eric, appreciate the time. Appreciate what you do for Georgia Southern Athletics.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
Once again, that is Erick Reasoner, the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Development for Georgia Southern. Really, really good guy, and can't talk enough about what he and his staff have done really over the last 12 months, 24 months almost. It seems like they've been here forever, but it also seems like they've been here for about 3 minutes.
All that they've done, it makes it feel like they've been here for a lot longer than they have.
Yeah.
But we have our department-wide meetings at the beginning of every month. He usually gives a report from the foundation side.
Yeah.
And the numbers he spits out, they're usually really good. That's an inside joke. But the numbers he spits out, you just continually get amazed by what they've been able to do despite the circumstances that we're all dealing with.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what they've been able to pull off simply by being good people.
Yeah. No doubt.
It's such a simple concept.
And being good people, reaching out and going, and I would be shocked if there is any kind of meeting that Eric or somebody on his staff would turn down.
When would you have thought that $10 million in a 12-month stretch was possible?
When he said it.
With what we're going into, it's going to have to be a regular thing with the construction, with the giving societies, with all of the options that you're going to want to be a part of. But to know that where Georgia Southern needs to get to as an athletic department, that doesn't need to be the number that makes your eyes bug out. It needs to be the norm going forward. But the fact that you have started that sets the foundation for what can be over the next few years.
No doubt. Really appreciate what they do over at the side of the Ted Smith family football operations. They're kind of in the stadium, but kind of not. They're over there. You know the building.
Yeah, you pull out the blueprints. Well, this one's kind of they're there.
It's close.
They're there.
We'll dive into Georgia Southern men's and women's basketball here in just a few moments. We joked about it a little bit earlier, how we hope that you and I between us have 4 games this week. It's something that we haven't really had the first part of the season, but really kind of, I don't want to say shocked, because I think that might be too strong a word, but it's kind of crazy how many, not just Georgia Southern, this is affecting the entire conference in a pretty big way.
Yeah, we talked last week about how Little Rock's women have yet to play a league game, and it's been 2 weekends / 4 opportunities to play. One thing I have thought about is for schools that have at least one program that are affected, how many other programs are affected at the same time? Because in a lot of ways, you're sharing facilities, there's overlap. So the fact that if one team is down and others are still able to compete, that's impressive from a standpoint of overall safety. In this league, if you've played 4 games, it's a minor miracle. And in the case of a UT-Arlington men that were here last Saturday and what turned out to be a great overtime victory for Georgia Southern, they're 3-1 now. But a quick look at the standings, exactly 4 teams have played 4 games. Troy, which Georgia Southern is going to see on Thursday, knock on wood in the Wiregrass. Of course, the Mavericks. Appalachian State is 2-2, and ULM is 1-3. Nobody else has played 4 games. Already, 4 teams are falling below the 80% threshold, which is required if you want to keep your seed going into the conference tournament. Now, this is just on the men's side. A year ago, it was 70, and we remember talking about how close Georgia State was to not making that mark because they had 8 games called off because of COVID. It was a constant situation in flux for them in regards to their conference contests. But now with 80%, it puts a little bit more pressure on each team to figure out their situation. The standards have been set down by the Sun Belt regarding that if you have 7 players, it doesn't matter if they're scholarship, walk-ons, whatever. You got 7 guys healthy, you've got 1 coach healthy, you got to play the games. If you have less, it is your choice to play. But if you've got the 7-1, the 7+1, I guess we can call it, then you have to go on the court, and whatever happens, happens. That's simply a way to avoid losing too many games. But on the men's side, you were with me on Saturday because the women's game against Appalachian State was called off. I hate the fact that you missed the game in Boone, but it was great having you courtside because it was a great game against UT-Arlington to win in overtime.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I wasn't too mad about having to not go up the mountain when it was snowing up there.
Well, we're back at a point where we're simply hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Where the games on the schedule are not there to be played. They're almost like placeholders, and you hope that you just get to that point. In an instance for Georgia Southern, you just hope that that bus is going to be out front sometime on Wednesday afternoon so we can head to Troy.
Georgia Southern women's basketball falling in their only matchup last week to Coastal Carolina, 72-69. They look ahead to the Texas schools coming into Hanner Fieldhouse. I feel like we did this last week. But
is it last Tuesday already?
Yeah,
last Monday already?
It's like the Twilight Zone in here as we catch up with the ESPN Plus voice of the Texas State Bobcats and Brant Freeman. And last week we talked about it a little bit earlier, how we talked to you about a game, and it was a great analysis of what we were going to see. But Then about 10 minutes after we hung up, we didn't see it.
That's just kind of the world we live in now, Colin. And by the way, I now expect to be a regular on this podcast. Let's just do this every week. I'll preview any game. You guys want to look at a Coastal? I'll talk Coastal with you.
He could take over the Carter College segment that we had a couple years ago.
Now we have the Brant Freeman section. But take us into this Texas State women's basketball team, 6-9, 1-2 in conference play. Up to this point, fell against Troy in their last game on Thursday, having to deal with a couple of COVID issues over the last couple of weeks with the opponents that they've been playing. But this is a Texas State team that the only time Georgia Southern saw them was last year in the conference tournament, which Georgia Southern would like to forget.
Yeah, you look at this Texas State, team, and they were unable to play Saturday. Not any fault within their own program, but South Alabama was having issues. They weren't able to play either game of their Texas road trip last week. Didn't play UTA either. So the only game they got in last week was Troy. And you mentioned the conference tournament. Texas State pushed Troy last year in Pensacola, the eventual champion, to overtime. Overcame a 17-point halftime deficit to take a brief lead of the fourth quarter. Troy wound up winning and, of course, won the tournament. And then they pushed Texas A&M in the first round of the NCAAs. Ironically enough, a tournament game held in San Marcos. As we know, last year, the men's NCAA tournament was all held in the greater Indianapolis area because of COVID. The women's was the greater San Antonio area. So it was a real treat that Texas State, our arena, this university got to serve as a host site for a few first-round games to include Troy's. That said, as competitive as that game was last March, the game last week was not competitive. And that's with Texas State having a lot of players back from that team a year ago, including Kennedy Taylor and Denasia Hood, two preseason all-conference players. And Troy actually had quite a bit of roster overhaul from last year. Their top player, Alexis Dye, transferred to Tennessee, and she's lighting it up right now for one of the top programs in the country.
Wow.
So Troy had to kind of reload a little bit. They added in some transfers and did really good through the portal. And, so I had a chance to see Troy up close and personal, and they're far and away the best team in the league when it comes to the women. Shandon Rigby has done a phenomenal job with that program. So Texas State didn't play well, got beat by, I think, 23 points with a team that only played 8 players. And Troy only had 8 players available, and those 8 players were pretty good. So Texas State, the record 6-9. They started fairly decently. I think they began the year 5-2, so they've since gone 1-7. Some of that has been the schedule. Their 2 conference losses came against arguably the 2 top teams, Troy and Louisiana. They played a good San Diego team on the road, but they also had some head-scratching losses, namely Dartmouth at home. They played an Ivy League school, which going into the game was winless, 0-10. And they hadn't played at all the year prior either. So they hadn't won a game in almost 2 calendar years. And they came to San Marcos and were motivated and won the game going away. So there's been some good, there's been some bad, and with that, you have a 6-9 record.
Talk about what Zenere Antoine has done with this program at Texas State. Her 10th year at the helm in San Marcos, and there were a couple of years where it was a little hit and miss, but for the most part, she's been one of the more consistent coaches in this league.
In terms of longest tenured, I think her, Shandon Rigby are among the 2 longest tenured coaches in the conference. Joe Foley, I think Little Rock is the eldest statesman when it comes to years of service at their school. And Gary Broadhead, Louisiana's been there a while too, but she's done a good job. The highlight came in the 17-18 year when they were on the verge of winning the conference tournament. They had the player of the year in Taylor Deere, had a really good 3-point shooter, Tasha Levitt at the time. They had the Holly twins, who, by the way, their sister, Shay, right now is playing for Vic Schaefer in Texas.
I thought you were about to say there was another one coming. Good night.
So they kind of caught lightning in a bottle that year. And there was hope that was going to be the jumping off point where they would establish themselves as maybe one of the top 3 women's programs in the Sun Belt. They've kind of fallen back a little bit, not to the bottom, but they're kind of in the middle of the pack right now in the Sun Belt. And you kind of had a feeling this year that they would rise up again because a lot of their key players are experienced. I mentioned Taylor and Hood earlier. They're both seniors. Lauren Thompson is a third-year transfer out of Virginia Commonwealth. She's got experience as well, also named preseason all-conference. The sample size is kind of small right now in Sun Belt play, only 3 games in, and they're 1-2 against good competition so far. But I don't get the feeling they've taken that leap this season. But getting back to Coach Antoine, she's second in program history in terms of longest tenure, behind only Suzanne Fox, who now is an analyst on our broadcasts for both the women and the men. And she's second in program history in wins as well, behind Suzanne Fox. But the one thing she has yet to do is guide this team to the NCAA tournament. I mentioned some of the other coaches that have been at the programs for a while, and they've all done that. That's something that is yet to happen with Texas State. And we'd like to see that, sometime in the near future, certainly. But I think that she's had a very consistently competitive, solid program during her time here at Texas State.
I want to ask you about Suzanne specifically. She's been with you on the ESPN Plus side the last couple of years. The successes that she had in San Marcos, from her perspective, what has she lent to those broadcasts that have made them, in my opinion, the best in the league?
Well, because of Suzanne, right?
You said that. I didn't say.
So when the ESPN Plus project came about and we needed analysts, I tried to find people that had familiarity with the programs they were going to cover. And so the first year we jumped into women's basketball, we had the advantage of Suzanne still being here. She works for the university. So after she had hung up the whistle, for lack of a better term, she stayed around at Texas State. And so knowing that she was right there, I inquired, about her services, and right away she jumped at it. So there was want to on her side of things. And every game she would ask for critiques. What am I doing wrong? How can I get better? She was invested. She wasn't somebody who would just show up, and just call the game that she sees in front of her. She would do her homework. She'd do research. I've seen the prep that you guys put together. I think I see it right there on the table. You guys have charts, right? Well, Suzanne shows up with her own chart. She's putting in the research, the time. We have the conference calls ahead of every one of our broadcasts, and she's in on every single one of them, and she's asking questions. She watches games, something that I tell broadcasters and even the people that are part of the productions as well. You have to consume the product.
Yeah.
If you want to be a chef, taste the food, right? If you want to be in broadcasting, watch the games, listen to the games. And she does that, and not just our own, but those around the league and national linear broadcasts as well. So it's simply, Danny, it's from an investment standpoint. She is invested, in the broadcasts and herself, and it really comes through in the broadcasts we put together.
She still shoot the free throws?
That wasn't her. that was somebody else. I'm going to leave it at that.
You talk about this Texas State team, and it's a team that has a lot back. You talked about Denasia Hood, so many different players throughout this lineup. What does the experience look like for this team?
Well, it's quite a bit. You mentioned Denasia Hood. She became the 20th player in program history to eclipse 1,000 career points. She did that actually in her hometown of San Antonio. Did it against UTSA, which we're always going to like that here. She's a well-experienced player. Obviously their go-to scorer. I think she ranks 4th right now in the conference in scoring. Kennedy Taylor, from an experience standpoint too, probably comes to the most important position, the point guard position. There was a stretch early in the year. She actually led the country in assists per game. She still leads the Sun Belt. She's not quite there in the national leaders anymore. I think she's dropped to 23rd or something like that. But she brings a lot of leadership, at a position that needs it. And I mentioned Lauren Thompson as well. A player that doesn't quite get the headlines as much as those three is Jakayla Bowie. This is her 3rd year now of the program. You mentioned the tournament game last year. between the Eagles and Bobcats. She had a big hand in that. Bowie they only played 2 games in the tournament, the win over the Eagles, the loss to the Trojans. Bowie played so well, she was named to the all-tournament team. There's not a ton of new blood on this year's team. Really, it's one that's loaded with experience. And those are the 4 players you're probably going to hear about the most when these 2 meet in Statesboro.
Who do you guys have this weekend?
So we're at home, and the men, for the first time since the year 2021, will get to play. Their last game was December 30th against Troy in the opener. So since the calendar turned to 2022, we haven't played yet. So the men will host ULM Thursday. Danny, you mentioned they're one of a handful of teams that's played all their games so far. And Louisiana on Saturday. Actually, just got done doing a lot of homework on ULM, getting ready for that game, and looking forward to it, man. It's been too long since we got a men's game in. So here they are, 2 weeks. This is a 3rd week now of conference play. They've played 1 game. So it's about time to lace them up and play again. And, I was envious of you two. I actually had a freelance gig on Saturday, and I had to drive quite a ways to get there. So what better way to spend the road trip than to listen to the Eagles and Mavericks, right, on the Georgia Southern Sports Network. And I had you guys tuned in. Great game, but great call, Danny and Colin, to the 2 of you. And what a finish. I remember I was texting you Danny, afterwards, like, man, how do you not foul up 3? But as you explained later, there are reasons behind that. And what a great, comeback in overtime and finish to that game. That's Sun Belt Conference basketball, right? At its best. But I was kind of, a little emotional too, because you kept mentioning the fact that could be UTA's final ever visit to Statesboro for basketball, right? But what a way to go out.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that probably is the last time that UT-Arlington comes to Statesboro, Georgia, and maybe anything. But
yeah,
if that is the last thing, great way to go out. Maybe not necessarily for them because they lost in overtime, but we got a chance to catch up with Josh, and it was a really cool couple of days. It was really neat.
Yeah, I guess they won't be making any football visits there anytime soon either.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that didn't get brought up at all.
He's only worn that one for the last 7 years now.
It's bizarre, by the way. Texas State and UTA, they spent time together, in the Southland forever. They went to the WAC together, left the WAC together for the Sun Belt, and now they're going back. Now they're going back to the WAC. And it was actually a WAC game that I covered on Saturday, and it's kind of bizarre to see UTA kind of head back to that conference. There are teams in Texas, so it makes geographical sense for them. I'm going to miss them, man.
Yeah.
You know what's cool?
What's that?
Our baseball schedule wraps up with UT-Arlington here.
Yeah.
Before we go to Montgomery for the tournament.
Second straight year, I didn't even think about that.
One final series for the Blaze.
Hopefully Josh makes the trip.
We're working on that one. We're efforting that one as we speak.
Good deal.
Brant, appreciate the time. I guess we'll have to catch up next week.
About to say, hey, 6:20 Eastern time next week again.
Brant, appreciate the time.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.
Once again, Brant Freeman, we have talked about it, a couple of weeks now straight, that one of the best guys in the league, Brant Freeman, the former radio voice of the Texas State Bobcats, now on the ESPN Plus side. We say he has gone to the dark side, but it's okay. We still like him.
He's coming up on Chad Jackson for most appearances on this podcast.
Yeah, that's very true.
JT's going to about catch him with his appearance here in a couple of minutes.
JT's getting there too. We'll get to JT Crabtree in just a few moments, but you look at what Georgia Southern men's basketball was able to do, a 74-73 victory over UT-Arlington on Saturday in overtime. That was, and Brant talked about it just a few minutes ago, that was a really, really good Sun Belt Conference basketball game.
It's what it should be.
Yeah.
It's what it should be. Granted, I'm not going to say everything is going to come down to the final seconds or overtime and going to be a one-possession game, but considering that UTA had won 4 in a row, they were off to a 3-0 start in conference play. The preseason polls did not think much of them, just like the Eagles. They were picked tied for 9th along with Troy, which we'll get to in just a couple of moments. Of course, the Eagles were picked 11th. And very similar to the Little Rock game, Georgia Southern was in good position. They were up double digits. They built a 14-point lead with a little more than 9.5 minutes to play. They were still up by 11 inside of 5 minutes, and then it whittled down to 6, but there was 90 seconds left, and you had to think, make a couple of free throws here and there, keep the game 2-3 possessions, you'd be in good shape. And you had some of your best free throw shooters, some of the best free throw shooters in the conference at the line. Trey Cobbs ended up missing the front end of a 1-and-1, even though he made up for it in overtime. Getty Uzapaitis ended up missing the back end of 2 shots and up by 3 in the final seconds. Brant brought it up, do you foul when you're up 3? Well, a lot of that depends on the situation, home road, underdog favorite. If you want somebody to go to the free throw line, if they're hot from 3, you don't want to give them a chance. In the case of UT-Arlington, we knew that they were 28% for the year coming in, and they've struggled from distance these last few years. They were hot that game, though. Even so, the guy...
And it was the ones that you didn't think were going to be hot were the hot.
David Azor was 18%. He goes 5 out of 5 from 3.
Of course he does.
Nicholas Alame was 4 of 15 on the year. He goes 3 of 3. And Javon Levi, who was 4 of 15 himself, hits a 27-footer to tie the game at the end of regulation. And then you get to overtime, you're down by 4. Cobbs takes over a little bit, hits 3 of his 4 field goals in that extra session. And he made one of the smartest plays I've seen this year because he fouled Levi off the ball with 20 seconds left, double bonus. So a guy that was 45% for the year had to shoot 2, missed them both. Kamari rebounds down 1. Cobbs ends up finishing it, put the Eagles back up by 1, had to endure a couple of shots in those final seconds. But that was a really well-played, good atmosphere. It was nice to be back in Hanner for the first time in 3 weeks, and even better for the Eagles to get that first Sun Belt win.
Again, 74-73, the overtime victory over UT-Arlington turned the attention back to the road as Georgia Southern will head to the Yellowhammer State. Maybe JT knows why it's called the Yellowhammer State.
I've got mine in the box. Mine's in the box ready to go.
Really?
No.
Oh, okay.
Not at all.
I was about to say, wow.
No shot.
The first shot is Troy on Thursday. Head over to Trojan Arena in Troy, Alabama. Get to see Barry McKnight. Barry couldn't join us tonight because he has his coach's show over at, I believe, Mama Goldberg's, if I've heard that 1,000 times right.
So he's talking to Scott Cross and Shanda Rigby as they get set for their week. But
Are there any stairs at Mama Goldberg's?
I don't believe so. I think that's a first-floor establishment in lovely Troy. But
so it's not in Atlanta.
We'll talk with JT in a second, but this is going to be a really challenging week for Georgia Southern. These are 2 of the best teams in the league.
And Troy's one that first couple of years under Scott Cross hasn't necessarily been exactly what everybody thought whenever whatever happened at UTA happened. He moves over to Troy after 1 year elsewhere. The first couple of years weren't exactly what you thought were going to happen, but it looks like Scott Cross finally has the team and the guys that he wants to get rolling with.
Yeah, that first year they won 9 games because he was still dealing with Phil Cunningham's regime. He basically flipped the roster in a year. They didn't improve that much last year, but did get up to 11 wins. They still had trouble shooting. They had trouble defending, despite the fact that we've talked multiple times about those Troy teams. They play so hard for him.
Yeah.
They gutted out for him. They've got a lot of blue-collar guys, would fit in very well at Georgia Southern if the situation presented itself. It's starting to click for them. They're 12-5. They're 3-1 in the league. They've won 7 of their last 8. That qualifies them as being the hottest team in the league. FEODG's the UTEP transfer down low, a big body at 6'9", 240. He immediately becomes one of the best post players in the league. It's affected Nick Stampley a little bit. 5th-year senior opted to come back for his COVID year. His numbers are way down, but somebody that's torn up Georgia Southern in his career, as has Zay Williams. Williams didn't play against App on Saturday because of COVID issues. Not sure what his status is going to be for Thursday. But this is a Troy bunch, really deep. They've got 18 players on their roster, one of the biggest rosters I can ever recall seeing. They're not shooting it great. They're shooting it better because they couldn't get much worse last year. Difference for them this year, they're defending. According to Ken Pomeroy, this is the best defensive team that Troy has had since they came to the Sun Belt 17 years ago.
You love you some Ken Pom, don't you?
You got to. You got to. You got to pull out the scalpel. You got to dissect because, he does the hard work for us. We just have to be able to read it.
You just got to read it.
We just got to read all after you pay him, but you just got to be able to read all it stuff. But this Troy team, I don't know if they're as talented as that team in 17 that won the tournament championship when Wesley Person went bonkers down in New Orleans, but this is the deepest team that Troy has had since they've been in the Sun Belt.
There's barely enough room on the paper. Good night. Thursday is Georgia Southern at Troy, 7 o'clock to tip-off, 6:30 the airtime with the Cutwater Spirits. Countdown to tip-off on the Georgia Southern Sports Network. And then on Saturday, make the trip down to Mobile, Alabama to pay a visit to our next friend up on the podcast, JT Crabtree. JT, appreciate you joining us, bud.
I would be remiss if I didn't start this by saying Link Kabajundi.
Oh, you're a treasure.
He looks like he's about to get drafted for the NFL in his living room.
Where's the party?
That, but yeah, I guess I am. I'm usually at my office doing these, but I have a puppy now, and so I had to come home and take him out. So welcome to my living room, boys.
I love it.
How's the pup?
Good. 14 weeks old now. You'll likely hear him bark in the background. You'll actually probably see my cat at some point walk over the top of the couch over my shoulders here in a bit. It's
Wait, so you've got a dog and a cat?
Yeah, they don't get along either. So it's been a joy.
The dog's name is Pepper.
Dog is Pepper. Cat is Annabelle. The dog's he's fun. I haven't had a dog in a long time. I haven't had a puppy since I was, probably like 10 years old. So it's an adjustment. It's a lot different from, taking care of it yourself than just, hey, mom and dad, here, go take care of it for me. So it's a lot different.
Yeah, I can't imagine Kimberly would be too happy about that.
No, probably not.
Take us into the South Alabama team, 10-5 on the season, but have started 0-2 in conference play. And you've only played Thursday games up to this point. Both of the Saturday games have been postponed. You fall against UTA in the opening series of Sun Belt Conference play, 89-87 out in Arlington. You're on your way to San Marcos. That one gets banged. You have to hang a right in Waco and head back to Mobile. Then you host Appalachian State last week. Fall 72-64 to the Mountaineers. And then Coastal Carolina gets canceled.
Directionally challenged is fine.
Yeah, it's whatever. Hold up the L's, which never mind.
It's Central Time, so he's all off.
Yeah, I don't know what day it is. I'm glad I said Thursday. But this week is a big week for South Alabama because Thursday you've got a nationally televised game, ESPN2, coming in for South Alabama against Georgia State, one that, depending on what Georgia State looks like COVID-wise, hopefully that one gets played for your guys' sake down in the Mitchell Center. But what does this team really look like the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, they've, on paper, uber talented. I could argue the most talented roster in the Sun Belt Conference. They just haven't been able to put together a full 40 minutes yet. And we've seen that a lot with Richie Riley teams so far in his tenure is, he'll bring in a lot of transfer guys, and talent-wise on paper, they look great, but they take a little while to gel. I think that this team is, I know this team is more together and a lot more gelled than the teams in the past. It's just when the offense is clicking, the defense isn't clicking, and vice versa a lot of nights. That was what happened at UTA was, the offense was fine, but the defense wasn't stopping anybody. And, you give up 30 points to Azor, and Alame hits a 3 to tie it in overtime, and it was right after we had just hit a 3, and we're feeling good, and then a dude shooting 19% for his career on threes turns around and hits one the other way. Just, it's been that kind of year so far in conference play. And then you mentioned we haven't played on a Saturday yet, which has been just bizarre. We were in Waco. We were headed to San Marcos 2 Thursdays ago, and we turned left, and we were just kind of like, I guess we're not playing. And then last week, we get to the arena, and we had heard that we had a COVID outbreak here or there. It wasn't too bad. And, you get on the court for the 50-minute warm-up, and there's 7 guys out there. And I asked our associate head coach, Adam Howard, is this all we got? And he said, we got 7. We're going to play. This is what we're going to go with. And really, yes, we had 7 guys rest out, but we really honestly had 6 guys playing because Adam Sizemore was the 7th man. And it's not a discredit to him of, he's the last guy that didn't play, and he was the only guy dressed out that didn't play. It was he himself had been cleared from COVID protocol that day. He hadn't practiced in like 3 weeks. And so he wasn't physically ready to play in a ball game. And he hasn't played meaningful minutes for us, honestly, since high school. He's the fan favorite, the guy that comes in late in the game when it's going one way or the other and hopes that you chuck up a 3 and make it. And so we were looking to, we might see some meaningful minutes from him. We didn't. We ended up turning around on Friday last week and having to cancel our Saturday game. So now we've got Georgia State coming to town for that nationally televised game you mentioned. Late start, 9 o'clock for you guys and 8 o'clock for us. But it'll be some good exposure. ESPN2 is nice. We've already been talking with their producers. Seem like nice folks. So looking forward to having the national spotlight in town.
You brought it up already with Richie's teams. He loves that transfer portal, and it almost takes away his ability to have tendencies because some years you sit in a 2-3 with a press, other years it's a man-to-man, you run a different offense with ball screens. How challenging is that trying to get used to basically a new team every year?
Yeah, it's tough. And honestly, last game against App State, when we had those 6 guys, we've played some zone, we've played man, we've played mostly man this year. And we started man-to-man. It wasn't working. We switched to 2-3 zone, and we did that the end of the 1920 season before the pandemic. We were doing 2-3 zone with pack line elements, and it worked. And we switched back and forth. Early in the game, we went 2-3 zone. We went box and 1. We went triangle and 2. We were changing it every single possession. It was giving App State fits, but at the same time, Joe McNulty, my color analyst, we're looking, okay, Deontay's got, who's he got? Oh, well, what's JJ doing over there? Oh, it's triangle and 2 now. Okay. It's interesting because it's keeping us on our toes. Something that I hadn't really thought about last year because of the pandemic. We didn't play on the other side of the division. Josh Sowers at UTA said, I don't know a single one of your guys. I haven't seen a single one of your players before. And I thought, okay, surely you've seen Kaio. No, you haven't seen anybody because we've turned the roster over so much in the last 2 years. It's tough. It's tough personally because, guys like KK Curry I got to know a little bit. John Petway I knew really well, and both those guys transferred out. And then you've got this new crop of guys, and it's like, all right, let's hit the reset button. Let's get to know these guys all over again. They're a fun group, and so I'm hoping they can get it going sooner rather than later because they are really fun. They're a lot of fun to be around.
A couple of guys in that new group for you. Charles Manning Jr., 17 points a game. Missed the Tarleton game a couple of weeks ago. You've got J.J. Chandler at 15 points a game. A couple of guys that really at the top of this offense have been a big part of it.
Yeah, it's we had heard early on because Charles joined the team last year and had to sit out as a mid-year transfer. But we had heard what he could do. But obviously he had foot surgery when he arrived, so we didn't see it for a while. And then the offseason, the summer rolls around, and we start to hear, this guy can score, this guy can play.
Yeah.
So, all right, you're playing against yourself, so, okay, yeah, you're supposed to be good and whatnot. And we had heard some good things about J.J. Chandler as well. And obviously he played pretty stout minutes at Texas A&M in his career, though. So, okay, you're bringing some high-level experience to the program from a big-time program as well. We're pretty excited about that. And the first thing that stood out to me about J.J. Chandler is just how fast the guy is. He can get up and down the floor so well. He can really athletic. He's not really he's not a point guard. He really is a true 2. He loves to shoot it, loves the mid-range game as well. He's kind of been forced into a 3-point role because the injuries to Turbo Jones and Greg Parham so far this year. So JJ stepped it up from 3-point range, and Chuck's the real deal. Charles Manning's the real deal, man. He's expressive. He's got a couple of technicals to his credit this year, and Richie Riley loves to give him a hard time of, hey, can you dunk the ball without getting the tee? And it's just the back and forth those guys have. And I'll throw Javon Franklin in there as well. An Auburn transfer. He's uber athletic. He's just a guy that's been looking for an opportunity in his career. He went JUCO to start out, went to Holmes Community College, went to Auburn and was playing behind some big name guys at Auburn. Just didn't get an opportunity and came to us and said, I just want a shot. Just let me show what I can do. And at 6'7", 220, he runs the floor, plays great defense. He's brutal on the boards, especially on the offensive side. Not having him against App State, I think, was the big one that hurt. If we had him and had just some guy, some interior defender to slow down Lewis Jr. and the other guys down there that like to bump bodies for App State, I think that game would have turned out a little bit different. But they're fun. Charles Manning Jr. and JJ are easily the top two guys. The way we go is typically based on what they're doing every single night.
You guys had an 8-game winning streak in the non-conference, but I want to ask you about a loss to Alabama because it seemed like you were every bit Alabama's equal for that entire game. What was that experience like at Coleman?
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And, Alabama, doing what they did last year and Auburn doing what they did the year before. And now we've played Auburn and Alabama each of the last 2 years. And so this deal starts a 2-for-1. They'll come to us next year, Alabama will. And, it was a chance to match up and say, all right, here we go. You guys have basketball up there and you're good, but we're pretty darn good down here on the coast too. And so it was an opportunity for us to show what we've got with our roster. And you mentioned it. We played pretty even with them. Aside from, Kaio didn't have a great offensive game that day, but he was great defensively. Charles Manning Jr. Had his usual game. J.J. Chandler got in really early foul trouble, so he didn't play a lot in that first half of that one. But, I think that was just a shot in the arm of the Saturday before. We played Alabama on a Tuesday, and we played at Wichita the previous Saturday, and they hung with them too. And it was kind of like, okay, we might have something here. And the Wichita game was where Turbo Jones broke his foot, and so we turned around and played at Alabama without Turbo for the first time, and we didn't have a point guard on the roster. We still don't right now. And so it was, who's going to run the offense? Manning, you try it. JJ, you try it. Alex Anderson mixed in there a lot early on as the point guard as well. Just trying to find some different guys that worked at the point guard position. It was a great feeling. It's one of those games where, it's not a moral victory, but you feel pretty good leaving the arena, and feeling the way you did after that and knowing they're going to come back to us next year is a nice shot in the arm of confidence.
You talked about Turbo Jones having the broken foot the last couple of weeks since Wichita State, and it's been talked about he may be back this week, it may be next week. You're hoping to get him back, hopefully this week. What does that do if he is able to come back against Georgia Southern and Georgia State this week?
Yeah, he's a true point guard. He's a true facilitator to the offense. He is pass first, shoot later. And his speed, the nickname Turbo, my God, he's got to be fast, right?
Hey, you don't give a slow guy that nickname.
Right. He's fast, man. He is fast. Now, he is a little undersized at 6'1", 180. But that's not gonna stop him. The dude plays with such tenacity. He's in your face all the time defensively. He can run up on you, and his hands are just throwing everywhere. And he's a great player. We've really missed him. And he's another guy just like Javon, who he was at Auburn. He was playing behind Sharif Cooper. He just couldn't find a spot. He couldn't find minutes at Auburn. Won an opportunity. And actually our associate head coach, Adam Howard, had a previous connection with him when Coach Howard was at Troy. They had recruited him there, didn't get him. Turbo went in the portal, and so they already had that pre-existing relationship. So Turbo comes down to us. We got a chance to see him last year because he was a mid-year transfer, and he was impressive. He practiced against the guys, and they were impressed. It's really, really slowed down what we want to do offensively so far this year because, like I said before, there's no true point guard, and Charles Manning Jr. is doing his best to run the offense, and he's done a pretty good job. But that's not what he's built for. He's a true two guard, and he wants to score all the time. And so when Turbo gets back either this week or next week, he's been out of the boot and off the scooter for a couple of weeks. When we were at UTA, he was shooting around a bunch, so he feels good. When he gets back, I think we'll really see this team start to look like what we expected them to preseason.
All right, with us sitting in Georgia, you sitting in the state of Alabama, I feel like we have to ask the question, who you got tonight in the Natty?
I just hope everyone has fun and they both lose.
That's the best answer to that question I've ever heard.
I feel like if he asked us that, we would have said the same thing.
Yeah, probably. Probably. That's fantastic.
We've all been kind of sitting around, and it's like, all right, who do you want to win? And for the state's sake, we're kind of like, okay, Alabama, keep it in the state lines, whatever. But I honestly, the feeling a lot of people have around here is that please don't let Georgia win, because Alabama fans are obnoxious enough as is. We don't need another fan base to be obnoxious winning a national championship. So just let Alabama have it like they always do, and we'll move forward.
Everybody have fun and both lose. That's fantastic. JT, appreciate the time. Hopefully, Danny gets down to come and see you this weekend.
I will do the best that I can.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had a Saturday game. Like, I'm getting spoiled right now. Like, I have weekends off. I'm like, what do I do? And I guess I'll watch the Sun Belt.
JT, appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, guys. I'll see y'all.
Once again, JT Crabtree. Again,
that's a rock star edition, isn't it?
Oh, no doubt. This might be the best edition of Inside Eagle Nation we've ever had. Some of the best lines, too.
I feel like we got to talk about the game a little bit, very briefly at the end of this.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Not yet, but
yeah, no,
we
we'll
got to
get
give
there.
our 2 cents.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if people want my 2 cents, but
all right, penny for your thoughts then.
Just one?
Just one.
Wow. All right. Men's basketball will have the Thursday matchup against the Trojans of Troy, 7 p.m. the tip-off. And then 5 o'clock inside the Mitchell Center against the South Alabama Jaguars on Saturday. We'll be on the air 4:30 on Saturday, 6:30 on Thursday for both of those matchups.
You know, he mentioned about Manning and Franklin and Chandler. I've watched South play twice. I haven't seen a lot of our teams play yet because not seeing the West, and I still equate it with the West, even though we're back as 12 teams in one league now. I think Charles Manning's the best player in the league.
See, I've actually seen South Alabama because a couple of weeks ago I was in Mobile for the Mobile Bowl.
Yeah.
And the Friday night before, they were playing their second of the home and home against Tarleton. And I actually called it for JT from their studios over at the iHeart Studios with Joe McNulty, who is fantastic, by the way.
He's a stud.
Oh, I love Joe.
He's a stud.
I didn't get a bang in, but I was kind of ticked about that. Got to let him have that.
Yeah,
Between him and Steve Holman, they got it.
And Mike Breen.
Yeah. But it was the game that he didn't play.
Of course.
So I can't help you out.
Having watched him a couple times, I don't need to see anybody else in the league. I think he's the best player in the league. Yeah. And that's what Georgia Southern is potentially going to have to contend with. But like what happened to South last year, if they would have been fully healthy at any point last year, South would have run away with the league. They had that much talent. But when you deal with the transfer portal as much as Richie Riley does, it can work. But if it doesn't, you're just trying to scrape to get by. You had Friday, Saturday last year in the league. He played most of the year with 6 guys.
Yeah.
Because of those issues. Now, you had Michael Flowers, who was leading the league in scoring, and he was as awesome a scorer as I've seen in this league since I got here 7 years ago, but he decided he wanted to test the waters in the Pac-12, so he transferred to Washington State. It's a whole new team again, like what was last year. You have Coyote Gonzalez as the holdover. He made more than 83s last year, second in the league, only to Flowers.
He's really good.
He is really good. One of the best shooters, despite 6'9", 240. He knows his game. He plays to his game. And from what JT has talked about, he's really improved his defense as well. But this year, it's happened again.
Yeah.
When they're at full strength, I think that they're the best team in the league. And I know we've only seen a couple of teams. I know we're only 2 weekends in. If that South team, even if they get Turbo Jones back, that increases their chances of winning this league exponentially. As it is, they had to play 6 guys last Saturday. App wore them down because they had no front court depth, and then not even being able to put a team together to play Coastal. So no idea what South is going to look like, and I don't know what Georgia Southern is going to look like. You'd like to think that Elijah McCadden is going to come back from COVID, but where he is in the protocol, if he's able to make the trip to Alabama, we'll get there on Thursday. But with as well as Troy is playing and as well as South can play, this is an important weekend, just 3 weekends in a conference play.
No doubt. Again, Thursday against Troy, Saturday against South Alabama, all of it on the Georgia Southern Sports Network. As we dive into news and notes in Georgia Southern athletics, everything's starting to get ramped up. It's the first day of classes on campus today,
School's in session.
So a lot more cars going through drive-thrus and down Fair Road.
That's how you know. And you see students walking around.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, class did start. Okay.
But a couple of news notes coming out in the past week. The Georgia Southern softball schedule got released this past week. Chad actually did that while we were on the road in Conway last week. But Pretty good schedule for first-year head coach Sharon Perkins. You start off with 2 back-to-back weekend tournaments hosted by Georgia Southern. You've got the Bash in the Borough to open up the season, February 11th through the 13th, the GATA Challenge the following weekend, and then you get a midweek matchup against South Carolina at Eagle Field at home.
That's good stuff.
You've got some really good home games this year. You've got Louisiana at home March 18th through the 20th. The next weekend you have Troy coming in the 25th through the 27th of March. Have to go to App. Coastal Carolina comes to Eagle Field. You get Texas State at home. You get Georgia State at home. Some really good home games to get out to Eagle Field and take in first-year head coach Sharon Perkins and her squad.
And I know that it's a new staff, but think about how well the Eagles played down the stretch last year, winning their final 6 Sun Belt Conference games to get the best seed they possibly could, and ultimately they lost to Georgia State in round 1 of the Sun Belt Tournament. Bring in Coach Perkins, that staff, that mindset, that way of doing things. You can see the influence of the schedule because of the connections that she built during her very successful tenure at Georgia Tech. I'm excited to watch that team play.
Yeah, I am too. Taking a look through some of the former Eagles in the NFL, the story got put up earlier on, I believe it was this afternoon, that after the regular season of the NFL concluded, given a kind of a season wrap-up, got 2 players on the Buffalo Bills and Tyler Bass, the kicker, obviously. 11-6 were the Buffalo Bills. They will take on the number 6 seed New England in Buffalo on Saturday. That went on CBS, but Bass, 28 of 32 field goals, 57 was his long, perfect 51 of 51 on point afters for 135 points in his 17 games played.
I think that's enough to earn a Pro Bowl. I hope it is. I think that's enough to earn a Pro Bowl.
We'll get to more Pro Bowl talk in a minute. Matt Breida with the Buffalo Bills as well. Played in 9 games, 26 rushes for 125 yards, had a touchdown, 7 receptions as well, 2 receiving scores. Again, Buffalo will take on New England coming up on Saturday up in Buffalo. For the New York Giants, and I didn't realize the Giants had this tough of a season, 4-13 on the year, but Raymond Johnson playing defensive line, played in 15 games, had 1 sack, 1 quarterback hurry. Obviously at 4-13, their season has come to a close. Younghoe Koo with the Atlanta Falcons, 7-10 on the season where the Falcons, we're not going to get into that by any stretch of the imagination. He played in all 17, was 27 of 29 field goals, had a long of 54, hit that long against the Saints this past weekend, 30 of 30 on point after attempts, and 111 points, and you can't tell me that is not enough for a Pro Bowl, but we won't get into that.
If you could find a way to get Koo in for the NFC, which he was last year, Bass for the AFC, the 2 starting kickers potentially out of the same school. We've framed Kicker U for a little while ever since Koo left here in 2016, and Bass had an incredible career, second in school history in field goals made behind Adrian Mora. That's a story that's just begging to be told.
Oh, no doubt. Had Jerick McKinnon, the running back with the Kansas City Chiefs, 12-5 on the season. They are the 2 seed in the AFC side. They will take on the number 7 Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday on NBC. That's the night game, 8:15. That's one that Kevin Harlan and Olivia Harlan-Decker are going to be calling for Westwood One, by the way.
I saw that Jerick scored against Denver this past weekend.
He did. Played in 13 games, had 12 rushes for 63 yards, a good majority of that coming against Denver this past week. Also had 13 receptions for 107 yards and a touchdown. Had a really good game against Denver. Did the Jet. In Kansas City, a team that has been kind of riddled with injuries the last week or so. So he may get some extra burn in the AFC playoffs as they take on Pittsburgh on Sunday.
Well, I remember early this season it was, what's wrong with Patrick Mahomes? Nothing.
Yeah, not a thing. Not one thing. Kendall Vildor with the Chicago Bears, 6-11 after firing Coach Nagy earlier on today, I saw. Mm-hmm. He played in 17 games, started in 12 of them, 46 tackles, had 1 sack and 4 pass breakups, and at 6-11, the Chicago Bears season has come to a close, and now looking for a new head coach, and I believe looking for a new general manager as well.
Yeah, Ryan Pace, the general manager there, that's a situation that is in need of a complete overhaul, and there's going to be a couple of situations like that in the NFL. There was one that got announced earlier today that shocked me. That
Dolphins?
Yeah, Brian Flores. They won 8 of their last 9 games, but didn't make the playoffs. But the ultimatum was before the year, you got to make the playoffs, so Dolphins held up to their word.
Yeah, I heard Adam Schefter on ESPN earlier on today say, yeah, you're going to hear his name in a couple of conversations in the next couple of weeks.
That's a name that people weren't expecting to be in conversations. Yeah. That's going to possibly not necessarily muddy up some coaching searches, but that's going to strengthen some coaching searches.
Yeah, no doubt. Moving along to Georgia Southern track and field, the indoor season will start this weekend as indoor track and field will be at the Gamecock opener over in Columbia, South Carolina. That on Friday, the 14th, in the all-day event over in Columbia. They get their indoor season started. A little bit shorter of a season, only 4 different events. You've got the Gamecock opener coming up this weekend. Next week, they'll be up in Lynchburg, Virginia to take on the Liberty Elite Invitational. If that's not the most apropos name for that, I have no idea what would be. And then the Sanford Bulldog Invite coming up February the 11th over in Birmingham before the Sunbelt Conference Tournament over in Birmingham as well. Georgia Southern Swim and Dive going to be getting it going back in the pool at the Aquatic Center at the Rack against Campbell coming up on Saturday, 1 p.m., the first dive for Georgia Southern Swim and Dive. And then Georgia Southern Rifle also gets things going. You can watch it on Twitch. Have you gotten your Twitch yet?
It's on my calendar to get it.
It's fantastic. 9 a.m., so rise and shine with Georgia Southern Rifle. Ooh, and I guess on Sunday you'll be back. But Sunday the 16th, 9 a.m., the first shot against number 19, Citadel.
Look, I might still be here.
That's true.
I hope I'm not, but I still might be here.
That one over at the Shooting Sports Education Center in Statesboro, so you can come out and take a peek at Sandra Warman and her bunch as they get it going against the number 19 country in the land in the Citadel. Georgia Southern men's tennis also starting their spring portion of the schedule, and not a easy way to start. You've got on Sunday, they will head down to Tallahassee to take on Florida State, 1 p.m. the first serve. Again, that coming up on Sunday. The first couple of matches for men's tennis, and new head coach going to be coming in is Florida State, Wake Forest, and then make the trip up to Furman. So not necessarily the lollipop of a schedule.
Jeremy Bayonne, show us what you got.
If there's anybody that is up to it, is definitely Jeremy, no doubt. But that's a look around other action in Georgia Southern athletics. Good to see everything start to get going again with tennis, rifle, swim and dive, track and field. A lot going on now here in the early portion. I guess we're getting toward the middle portion of January.
You've got the father and son baseball camp coming up next Monday over at J.I. Clements Stadium. You can get in touch with Rodney Hennon for more details regarding that. We're inside of 40 days before first pitch for Georgia Southern baseball, beginning up in Knoxville against what is going to be a nationally ranked Tennessee squad that went to Omaha last year. Softball is barely 30 days away from getting it rolling over at Eagle Field. Students are back. It feels right to just be home. It feels right that Georgia Southern won a home game because there hadn't been a game at Hanner Period for 2 weeks because the women hadn't played. They only had their Thursday contest against Arkansas State. All right. We need to get this out of the way.
Yeah. In about, I guess scheduled kickoff is about 45 minutes away. Actual kickoff is, probably about an hour, 45 away. But really about an hour away. Georgia and Alabama. You and I actually saw them in the SEC Championship up at Westwood 1 working for Mike Watts, Ben Blevins, some good folks up there. But we got to see Alabama absolutely torch Georgia, especially in the second half. Yeah. They had no answer for Bryce Young. Not one.
Happens with a Heisman Trophy.
Not many people did. Yeah. But not many people had a answer for Jordan Davis either, but Alabama found one.
We were told that Alabama's offensive line was the weak part of their offensive attack. Didn't give up a sack against Georgia.
Yeah, no, I think
not one sack.
Yeah, no, they were fine. They were pretty fine.
Who you got?
But Georgia, Alabama, who you got?
No, you got to go first.
Well, why's that?
Because I asked first.
That's not nice.
And I got my question in first.
That's really not nice.
And I'm older.
You're not allowed to the young alumni camp.
That's my punishment, so I get to be second on this.
I got to go Alabama. And I know in the state of Georgia, I should be going Georgia. A lot of people that know me know I'm not a Georgia person by any stretch of the imagination for a lot of different reasons.
No.
I just like Alabama. I like Alabama on the field. I like the people at Alabama. A couple of different people that we know through the Learfield connection, and now Georgia, part of the Learfield family as well, but know the Alabama folks over there a little bit better between Eli Gold, Roger Hoover, the guys that have the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and all what seems about 28 of them. But I don't know. I'm going Alabama.
Georgia's got more talent.
Yeah. I'm going Alabama, but the only reason I would like to see Georgia win it is for Stetson Bennett, because I love his story. Former walk-on from South Georgia. Frank loves Stetson Bennett, so that's all the stamp of approval I need.
Nolan Smith, a relatively local product as well that Frank's had pleasure covering for a number of years.
So Stetson Bennett would be the only thing that would try to sway me towards the red and black.
If Georgia gets back to the defense it utilized the first 12 games of the season, I think that they'll win. However, Nick Saban is the head coach for Alabama.
Bingo. You don't bet against Saban.
His assistants are 1-24 against him all time.
Yeah.
That first win coming this year in College Station, it was Jimbo Fisher.
Which I'm pretty sure if you had Jimbo Fisher on your bingo card for that, you're lying.
So there are pretty compelling arguments for both, because Georgia still had one of the best regular seasons in recent memory. The defense is one of the best of all time, giving up just 7 touchdowns all year before Alabama got them for 5 in the SEC championship game. I could see Georgia winning it, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if they don't adjust, it's going to be more of what we saw in the SEC championship.
You want a trivia question real fast?
Always.
This coming from Russ Brown.
Okay.
He sent it to me earlier when we were talking about the game, and he said, just heard this little bit of trivia. Can you name the last SEC East coach to beat Nick Saban?
Steve Spurrier, 2010.
Oh, okay. I thought that was going to be more fun than that.
Because I was living in Charleston at the time, and I did not hear anything else besides South Carolina football for the next 2 weeks. Bobby Harton's Fan Talk on ESPN Radio 98.9 in Charleston. They were convinced they were going to be the number 1 team in the country that week, even though they went into that game, I think, 10th or 11th. It was in Columbia. Steven Garcia had the game of his life. Alabama didn't really play poorly, but South Carolina did everything right. And they were trying to convince themselves that they should have been ahead of Alabama in the then still BCS rankings. But as it worked out, no. It was a great day in Columbia, though. I do know that.
I can imagine.
But it was some 36 in a row against the East. Alabama's won. It's come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Something stupid.
Ball coach.
Yep. But Georgia and Alabama getting it going here in probably around an hour or so from Indianapolis. Frank Solkowski, Amy Zimmer out in Indy right now. I think Frank has finally thawed out.
Well, it's tough when you only got one shoe.
True. Very accurate.
No, but
at least it's not a flip-flop.
It's been cool getting a chance to see him and Amy catch up with so many of their colleagues, because every local station from anywhere near those markets flooding Indianapolis, and I think that's an outstanding destination. It's fairly centralized.
Yeah, I loved Indy. Big fan of Indy when we went.
I hope he went to Lockmiller's to get a pretzel, because that was the best part of that Indiana trip from 4 years ago. The hope is that it is the game it's being built up to be.
Yeah.
It's a national championship game, supposed to be the 2 best teams. I hope we can enjoy it just for the sake of that.
No doubt, but we get back to Georgia Southern men's and women's basketball. Women's basketball at home inside Hanner Fieldhouse. Thursday, 6 p.m. the tip-off against Texas State. 2 p.m. the tip-off against UT-Arlington. Chad Jackson and I will have the call for you on that one on the Georgia Southern Sports Network. Hashtag 99.7 here locally in Statesboro and on the Varsity app. For Georgia Southern men's basketball, hit the road to the Yellowhammer State to take on Troy on Thursday. 7 p.m. the tip-off against the men of Troy, and then on Saturday against South Alabama, 5 o'clock the tip-off. Danny will have the coverage for you 30 minutes prior with the countdown to tip-off, brought to you by Cutwater Spirits. You can listen to it, obviously, on the Georgia Southern Sports Network, the Varsity app, and here locally, 94.9, our good friends over at Foundry Broadcasting, the home for both Georgia Southern men's and women's basketball. Until this weekend, for the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.